Since 2011, Syria has been in civil war with 9 million Syrians fleeing and 220,000 dead. When Alan Kurdi's picture surfaced, the refugee issue exploded globally. The question of Canada's military involvement in Syria then became intertwined with bringing in refugees. Thus, we ask, based on your understanding of what values are essential to Canadian national identity, how should Canada respond to the Syrian refugee crisis? In relating this issue to Canadian military intervention, my understanding of Canadian identity is associated with the rule of law. This basic concept stands at the head of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and specifically states, Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of the rule of law. To be consistent, the Canadian government must work to promote the rule of law not merely in Canada, but internationally. Although many are not aware, Canada has been breaking international law by dropping bombs in Syria along with the U.S. military. The United Nations Charter sets out a number of criteria on armed force against a sovereign state. Specifically, Syria is not attacking a member state, it has not requested military help, and the UN Security Council has not authorized military action. However, the Canadian government does not agree with these criteria. However, from the government's point of view, these actions are justified because ISIS constitutes such a threat to Canada and the Middle East that it has a moral obligation to intervene, and, as such, makes military action legal. In this way, the government hopes to help resolve the conflict. It is the ongoing Syrian civil war which poses for Canada the question of whether it should take in refugees. People continue to flee. Some are anti-Assad and some are merely anti-ISIS, and all just want to escape the carnage. I feel that illegally dropping bombs into this situation is not helpful, since aerial bombardment can never be 100% precise, and over time civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure increase. In my view, if Canada wants to help solve the Syrian refugee crisis, it needs to comply with international law. Thus, it should limit its military action to where it is UN authorized, which is only in Iraq. Further, it must employ diplomacy at the UN to come to an agreement with the Syrian government and others on how to proceed while reducing military action. Only by creating the widest possible coalition can the necessary resistance to ISIS be focused and undivided. This will both provide rule of law and speed up the process towards peace and the reconstruction of Syria. These are only some among many key measures necessary for solving the Syrian refugee crisis.
As Canadians consider the appropriate response to the military crisis in Syria, the question of helping displaced people has become increasingly important. While peacekeeping is a popular view of Canadian identity, it has gradually become an outdated vocation for Canadian forces. In my opinion, the role of the Canadian military in Syria needs to be reassessed to turn peacekeeping into a reality. Canada has progressively turned to a more American proactive stance on war, arguing that the best defense of a country is a preemptive approach to military. The Government of Canada has accepted that military action is necessary for the protection of citizens, moving even further away from humanitarian ideals and contesting peacekeeping in the form of non-use of force. Since World War II, the primary purpose of the Canadian military has been the defense of Canada, contradicting the peacekeeping discourse the public is exposed to. The Government of Canada has contributed $800 million in humanitarian, development, and security assistance in response to the crisis in Syria. Of that $800 million, only $139 is dedicated to humanitarian assistance in the region. Prime Minister Stephen Harper stated, "We do not need to choose between fighting ISIL and helping its victims. We will continue to do both." But as Canada continues to take military action against ISIS, they are contributing to the destruction of civilians' lives, as this is an unavoidable certainty of participating in operations that move beyond peacekeeping. I believe Canada's peacekeeping identity was established as a facade in an attempt to appease a strong anti-war discourse. Canada needs to consider its foundations of colonial imposition and the implications this has towards both the military crisis in Syria and the response towards refugees. In reference to European arrival to Mamaki, Stephen Augustine stated, "We didn't have an immigration policy. We allowed you guys to come in and we supported you until you could do it yourself." The Canadian military in Syria should be informed by this statement and move to the forefront with peacekeeping contributing to the health and well-being of those in refugee camps throughout the Middle East and on Canadian soil.
The Syrian refugee crisis uncovers another aspect of the popular discourse around Canadian national identity, namely that we are a multicultural mosaic nation. But a closer analysis of this basic understanding of Canadian national identity is tenuous at best when held in the light of the Syrian refugee crisis. The reality is, Canada is multicultural. A recent poll conducted by the Angus Reid Institute states that more than half of respondents believe Canada should be a melting pot, while one-third of Canadians endorse the concept of the mosaic. Kelly McParland of the National Post takes this up in his multicultural definition, stating, "You can be as different as you want, just as long as you act like everyone else." Such an ethos is directly contrary to Pierre Trudeau's official multicultural policy of 1971 and Canada's 1988 Multiculturalism Act, often held up as a shining example of cultural tolerance in the Canadian mosaic. The truth about Canada's multicultural health is much bleaker than such documents paint, and such realities as the Syrian refugee crisis show. In order to save our mosaic ethos, Canada needs to implement immigration policies that have been more humanitarian in nature, such as our intake of 37,000 Hungarian refugees following the 1956 revolution, or the 60,000 boat people accepted from Vietnam following the Vietnam War, albeit in a more immediate fashion than exhibited at the time. With the Syrian refugee crisis, Canada's status as an accepting, tolerant land open to immigrants of all backgrounds is at risk. In order for a walk to metro talk, that is, the desirable talk of a mosaic nation, not the current discourse as measured by the Angus Reid Institute and seen in the government's lackadaisical actions, we need to tap back into Trudeau's ideal cultural ethos. Canada needs to open the borders to Syrian refugees, ignoring the Islamophobic discourse underlying our current dressed-up immigration and refugee policies. Canada needs to increase our desire to take in Syrian refugees in order to meet our hallowed mosaic vision. After all, the capacity is there, some estimations being upwards of 90,000. Much like our identity as Canadians is complex, the situation and issues surrounding the Syrian refugee crisis are contested in a similar way. The Syrian refugee crisis demands Canadians to consider what values shape our understandings of our own identity in order to respond appropriately and work towards a global solution.